November 11, 1988, a tragic event occurred in Charlottetown, Prince Edward Island, Canada. Byron Carr, a 36-year-old high school teacher, was being expected at a family gathering but failed to show up. Concerned for his well-being, his family attempted to reach him, and when they could not, they decided to visit his home. What they discovered was devastating. As law enforcement began their investigation, it became evident that Byron had been harboring a secret, one that he had concealed from nearly everyone, including his own family. The community of Charlottetown and Byron's family were left in shock, grappling with the reality that a murderer was at large. Questions loomed: who could have perpetrated such a brutal crime against Byron, and what was the hidden truth he had kept? On Friday, November 11, 1988, Byron's family began to feel anxious when he didn't arrive for their scheduled family gathering, and their attempts to reach him by phone went unanswered throughout the night. The following morning, November 12th, they decided to visit his home in Charlottetown. Upon their arrival, they discovered the back door was ajar. Inside, everything appeared to be in order. His dog was barking from its kennel, and dishes were left on the counter, but Byron was missing. With a sense of dread, they approached his bedroom door. There, on the bed, lay Byron, lifeless. The initial shock quickly morphed into horror as they realized he had been stabbed. The police were called to the scene, and their arrival marked the beginning of a detailed investigation. Detectives concluded that Byron had been strangled, with the stab wound occurring post-mortem. Among the items found in Byron's home, police discovered significant evidence: a pair of unfamiliar underwear and a set of socks tossed in the trash. These items seemed out of place and were collected for further analysis. The underwear contained male bodily fluid from an unidentified man, unveiling a shocking truth to Byron's family. He was gay and had met someone shortly before his murder. To piece together his last moments, investigators interviewed his friends. They learned that Byron had met with them for coffee on the evening of November 10th, before heading out to meet others in Charlottetown. Witnesses confirmed he had been at several bars that night, socializing and having a good time. Conversations with Byron's friends indicated that his last known activity occurred just before 3 a.m. on November 11th, when he had given a friend a ride home. The question remains, how did a man who set out for an enjoyable evening end up deceased in his own bed? The peculiar circumstances surrounding the case left law enforcement perplexed. Additionally, Byron's sexual orientation presented unique challenges for the investigation. Many witnesses and acquaintances were reluctant to come forward, fearing the repercussions of revealing their identities in a society that was not fully accepting of LGBTQ+ individuals. These elements contributed to the case quickly becoming stagnant. Some speculated that the police were not fully committed to the investigation due to Byron's sexuality. It would take many years before the Charlottetown police experienced a breakthrough that would help them reconstruct Byron's final known moments. 2 decades after the case had stalled, a significant development occurred when a key detail emerged. In 2008, a witness reported having seen Byron in the early hours of November 11, 1988, shortly before his demise. This individual recounted that Byron had stopped at an intersection around 3 a.m. to converse with a man on a bicycle. After a brief exchange, Byron resumed his journey home, with the cyclist seemingly following him. This revelation provided fresh insight into the case, although the police were initially cautious, given the 20-year gap. However, the witness's successful polygraph test lent credibility to their account. Authorities theorized that this unidentified cyclist had accompanied Byron home, where an intimate encounter turned fatal when the man allegedly strangled Byron. The intrigue surrounding the case intensified as additional witnesses emerged in the following years. One individual claimed to have observed an unfamiliar vehicle lingering outside Byron's residence on the evening of November 11th before it sped away. This scenario suggested that the perpetrator had revisited Byron's residence later that day, following the heinous act. Authorities speculated that the assailant either returned solo or rendezvoused with an accomplice at Byron's abode on the evening of November 11th. Their intent appeared to be the meticulous cleanup of the crime scene, erasing any trace of their presence, including fingerprints and DNA. To ensure no evidence was left behind, they donned socks. In a chilling act, one of them inflicted a stab wound on Byron long after his demise, perhaps to leave a more macabre signature. Subsequently, the duo made their escape. A pivotal clue emerged from one of Byron's former students, a mysterious individual who harbored an obsession with Byron. Byron once confided in me about a man who frequently called him, seemingly seeking some form of connection, whether fleeting or enduring, I cannot say. Regrettably, this lead proved to be of little assistance, leaving the investigation at a standstill. As the inquiry progressed, detectives crafted a profile of the suspect, aiming to unravel the cold case. The profile depicted a young male, aged between 15 and 25, likely leading a perilous lifestyle in Charlottetown. There was a suspicion that the assailant identified as bisexual or gay, possibly with a background of minor criminal offenses. Among the most significant pieces of evidence discovered at the scene was a pair of unfamiliar underwear and a handwritten note proclaiming, "I will kill again." Analysis of the handwriting revealed a unique style marked by circular motions and dotted circles above the eyes. However, investigators theorized that the note was not a legitimate threat, but rather an expression of rage. It was posited that the killer and his accomplice had returned to the residence in search of the misplaced underwear, inadvertently left behind after their initial encounter with Byron. When their search proved fruitless, they reacted in fury, leaving the ominous note as a remnant of their anger. The recovered underwear was identified as a medium-sized bikini-style Zers brand, featuring a 29.12-inch waist. In the years that followed, particularly during the 2000s, remarkable advancements in technology empowered investigators to meticulously analyze the male bodily fluid found on the fabric sample, allowing for the extraction of DNA. The findings unequivocally indicated that the DNA did not belong to Byron, nor did it correspond with any entries in the national database, an undeniable indication that it was linked to the perpetrator. Another pivotal piece of evidence emerged in the form of a discarded pair of socks, which also harbored DNA. Although the police successfully identified the individual who had worn the socks, they chose to keep this information confidential. This person was an accomplice of the killer, but tragically they had passed away in the late 1990s, leading the investigation to a disheartening impasse. Nevertheless, the Charlottetown police remained resolute in their quest to unravel Byron's case, regardless of the time it might demand. They diligently collected DNA samples from all individuals who might have had any connection to Byron, including men he may have encountered that fateful night, yet no matches were discovered. In 2018, the police received 2 enigmatic phone calls from an unidentified man near Charlottetown Mall. He asserted that he possessed vital information regarding Byron's murder, his voice laced with urgency. However, he vanished as swiftly as he had appeared, leaving no trace of his identity or means of contact. More than 3 decades had elapsed since Byron's tragic end, yet the truth remained out of reach. While the police believed they had pinpointed the accomplice, the identity of Byron's killer continued to linger as a haunting enigma. Then, quite unexpectedly, a breakthrough emerged, infusing the investigation with renewed vigor. After 35 arduous years, a glimmer of hope illuminated the Byron Carr murder case. In the spring of 2022, investigators took a bold step. They revisited the evidence from the crime scene and subjected a piece of underwear to genetic genealogy testing. This intricate process involved uploading the DNA profile to genetic testing databases, with the aspiration of uncovering a match among the relatives of the killer. It was a painstaking endeavor, but ultimately it bore fruit. In January 2024, the police finally unearthed a promising lead. Todd Joseph Gallant, now 56 years of age, would have been merely 21 at the time of the murder. The memories of that fateful November day in 1988 undoubtedly resurfaced for many individuals. At the time, investigators were unfamiliar with Gallant's name. He had previously been convicted in Prince Edward Island for breaking and entering in 1987. During that period, he resided in Charlottetown, not far from Byron Carr. Shortly after the murder, he departed for the United States, only to return to Charlottetown in 2022. On January 26, 2024, Gallant was apprehended in connection with Byron Carr's murder, facing charges of first-degree murder and tampering with human remains. While the investigation was beginning to piece together the narrative, numerous questions lingered. What truly transpired that night? What could have compelled Gallant to commit such an act? For Byron's family, the pursuit of justice remains ongoing. John, Byron's brother, was overcome with emotion when the Charlottetown police formally charged Gallant with the murder. His heartfelt reflections on his brother were deeply moving. The investigation encountered significant obstacles, including societal biases and the apprehension of witnesses, leaving many inquiries unresolved. As the trial approaches, the family holds on to the hope that Gallant's sentencing will not only provide justice and closure in this long-standing case, but also shed light on broader issues of prejudice and violence against the LGBTQ+ community. Was Byron Carr's murder motivated by animosity towards his sexual orientation, or is there a deeper narrative yet to be uncovered? The truth remains elusive for the time being, but it is only a matter of time before it emerges.
On April 11, 1968, Hyram Graham, a 47-year-old decorated World War II veteran, embarked on his usual milk delivery route but failed to return home. The milk company filed a missing person report later that evening when his truck did not arrive as scheduled. Despite extensive search efforts, it was not until the following day that he was discovered through an aerial search deep in the woods of Vero Beach, Florida. Tragically, Hyram Graham was found deceased beside his milk truck, having been shot 3 times in an execution-style manner. His murder occurred just days after the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr., raising concerns about a potential link to the prevailing racial tensions of the time. The motives behind the execution of this cherished local figure remain a mystery. Was it an act of personal vengeance, or was it related to issues of race or robbery? These questions lingered unanswered for over 50 years until they were finally addressed in 2024. During the latter part of World War II, the U.S. Army engaged in the pivotal Battle of the Bulge against Germany, a conflict that significantly influenced the war's outcome. Hyram Graham was among those who fought bravely in this battle, earning the Purple Heart Medal from the President for his sacrifices on the battlefield. Following the war, he took on leadership roles, including serving as chairman of band associations and as commander of disabled American veterans. In the 1960s, Graham relocated to Vero Beach, Florida, with his family and began his career as a milk salesman for the Borden Milk Company. In addition to his sales role, he also served as the commander of the Civil Air Patrol for the district. Known for his warm-hearted demeanor, Graham was beloved by his customers, often assisting those who struggled to afford milk. He and his wife, Doris, raised 2 sons and a daughter, enjoying a fulfilling life in the picturesque city of Vero Beach, unaware that it would come to an abrupt end. On the morning of Thursday, April 11, 1968, Graham was following his regular delivery route in the Gifford neighborhood when a local girl observed him engaged in conversation. This moment marked the last time he was seen alive. After completing his delivery, Graham did not return home, raising concerns when he failed to bring the truck back to the Fort Pierce office of the Borden Milk Company. The Indian River County Sheriff's Office was notified, initiating a search in the vicinity of Graham's route, but he was nowhere to be located. As worries escalated, an aerial search was organized the next day to cover the city and surrounding wooded areas. From the air, officers discovered a disturbing sight in a forested region between North and South Gifford Roads, a milk truck with a man lying beside it. Upon reaching the scene, their worst fears were realized. It was Graham, who had been shot 3 times in an execution-style manner. An autopsy indicated that the shots were fired from a low-caliber weapon, and approximately $70 to $80 was missing from the truck. Interviews with locals in the Oslo and Gifford areas revealed information about the girl who last saw Graham. She recounted that she approached his truck and observed him conversing with 2 African-American men. Graham assured her he would return shortly, after which the 3 individuals drove away in his truck. Shortly thereafter, witnesses reported hearing several gunshots. According to police reports, a Chevrolet from the early 1950s, occupied by two unidentified males, was seen speeding away from the area just minutes after the shots rang out. The girl's account indicated that the two men who entered Graham's milk truck were armed. The question lingered. Did Graham know them, or were they threatening him for reasons unknown? The circumstances surrounding their interaction and the subsequent events remained a mystery. Despite the diligent efforts of the authorities, both individuals involved remained unidentified. The perpetrators successfully evaded capture. On April 15, 1968, Larry Edwin Graham, just 16 years old at the time, received the heartbreaking news of his father's death from sheriff's officers. Hyram was laid to rest in Crestlawn Cemetery following a military farewell service. Over the subsequent 6 years, numerous attempts were made, with more than 15 investigations conducted across the county to uncover leads on the assailants, yet none proved fruitful. The case of the veteran soldier's murder ultimately went cold. After 38 years, the tragic event surrounding Graham's homicide faded from memory. In 2006, however, Larry Graham stepped forward to advocate for his father's case. During an open interview with a local media outlet, he and his family accused a man named Thomas Williams from Indian River County of being responsible for Hyram Graham's murder. Larry expressed the family's strong belief in this individual's potential involvement, although the basis for this conviction was not disclosed. This marked the first indication of renewed interest in the case in nearly 4 decades, prompting the sheriff's office to reopen the investigation. However, before they could delve into the allegations against Thomas Williams, who resided in Indian River County, he sent a letter to the editor of a local newspaper. In his letter, he asserted that he had been unjustly implicated in a random case and claimed to have no knowledge of the situation. He firmly denied any connection to the case and cautioned the newspaper against tarnishing his reputation. Consequently, the investigation lost its momentum and once again fell into dormancy. Years later, in 2022, the cold case received its first significant clues when a lead emerged from an unexpected source within the county jail itself. An inmate whose name remains undisclosed but who had a connection to Thomas J. Williams reported that Williams had confessed to him about the murder of a milkman in the past. This inmate informed the detectives that Thomas Williams was a highly dangerous individual with a history of multiple arrests and convictions for various felonies. Seeking solid verification of this claim, the detectives pursued additional individuals associated with Thomas Williams. Their investigation led them to a woman from Miami in 2023 who had previously been married to Williams before their divorce. Although she opted for anonymity, she provided crucial information to the authorities. She testified that Williams had also confessed to her regarding the shooting of the milkman. With 2 independent testimonies from witnesses who had never met and were unaware of each other's statements, the detectives felt they had gathered sufficient evidence for a conviction. However, Thomas Williams had passed away from natural causes in 2016. Sheriff Eric Flowers noted that both witnesses chose to come forward only after Williams's death. While he was alive, they considered him a significant threat to their safety and that of their families. In their separate accounts, both witnesses expressed that Williams's death empowered them to speak out, as he was no longer a danger. "I would have never said anything to you before. As long as he was alive, he was a threat to me and my family. We would have never told you, but the fact that he is now dead gave me the courage to come forward," one of the witnesses remarked. Larry mentioned that the murder of his father occurred during a period of heightened racial tensions following the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr. There is a belief that the father may have been targeted in the largely African-American neighborhood of Gifford. However, Sheriff Flowers has refuted these allegations, asserting that the primary motive behind the crime was robbery. Following Graham's passing, the Bordon Milk Company reported that approximately $70 to $80 was unaccounted for from the truck. Concerning the second individual who was with Thomas Williams during the incident, Sheriff Flowers indicated that they have a potential suspect in mind, but require further verification from additional witnesses. He has urged anyone with relevant information to reach out to the Indian River County Sheriff's Office. In April 2014, Thomas J. Williams was found guilty of murdering Hyram Graham. During a press conference, Larry Graham reflected on his father's brave life and the lengthy ordeal his family faced. After 56 years, the Graham family finally achieved closure, allowing the valiant Hyram Graham to rest peacefully as a war hero. On August 26, 1998, the city of Pensacola experienced a tragic event that would cast a long shadow over the community for an astonishing 26 years. After completing his shopping at a Winn-Dixie supermarket on Navy Boulevard, 46-year-old Stephen Davis, a former Army veteran, was preparing to head home. He drove an old yellow cab, which served as both his personal and workplace vehicle, as a cab dispatcher. Unbeknownst to him, someone was already waiting inside his cab. At approximately 4 a.m., as he entered the vehicle, he was met with a sudden barrage of gunfire. 3 shots rang out from the back of the cab, leaving him in shock. In a desperate attempt to escape, he exited the car and tried to flee toward the Winn-Dixie, located just across the parking lot. Unfortunately, he stumbled and fell, ultimately succumbing to his injuries. The nature of the attack suggested it was premeditated, yet identifying the individual responsible for this heinous act proved to be a formidable challenge. In fact, it would take nearly 3 decades before any sense of closure could be achieved. The question remains, why did it take such an extended period? Upon the arrival of law enforcement at the scene, they meticulously examined the lifeless form of Stephen, noting the grievous gunshot wound to his jaw and 2 additional wounds to his right posterior thorax. It was evident that Stephen had succumbed to his injuries shortly after collapsing in the lot. As investigators sought to unravel the mystery, they stumbled upon Stephen's abandoned cab near Navy Boulevard. The driver's door and rear passenger doors stood ajar, while the driver's side window lay shattered, hinting at the chaos that had unfolded. Forensic experts meticulously combed through the crime scene, uncovering a bloody fingerprint that was subsequently sent for analysis. The blood was confirmed to belong to Stephen Davis, yet the fingerprint yielded no matches in the database. Sheriff Chip Simmons of the Escambia County Sheriff's Office revealed that they had attempted to find a match on 3 separate occasions, all to no avail. Although CCTV footage captured the incident, it proved to be of little assistance, as no distinguishing features were discernible. In a poignant tribute to Stephen, his employer closed its doors for the day, allowing all to attend the funeral, where a procession of cabs lined the streets in solemn remembrance. In the aftermath of the tragedy, a detailed flyer circulated depicting a man seen in the vicinity around the time of the murder, described as either a job applicant or a current employee of a nearby establishment. Yet no leads emerged from this effort. With the investigation stymied and no further evidence to pursue, the police were compelled to classify the case as unsolved, leaving it to languish in obscurity for decades. However, in a remarkable turn of events, 25 years later in 2023, the Escambia County Sheriff's Office enlisted the expertise of over 20 retired officers to revisit a selection of cold cases, among which was the haunting case of Stephen Davis. Following the decision to reopen the Stephen Davis case, law enforcement utilized advanced technology to conduct tests, resulting in a match for a bloody fingerprint in early 2024. In 2012, Donald Holmes II was apprehended for a home invasion robbery in Escambia County and subsequently sentenced to 20 years in prison in 2014, with a scheduled release in 2032. The fingerprint linked to the incident was identified as belonging to Donald Holmes II. As the investigation progresses, the Escambia County Sheriff's Office announced on the morning of March 5, 2024, that they would be charging Holmes with the murder of Stephen Davis. In response to the arrest, Stephen's two surviving sisters expressed their sentiments, stating, "I'm glad you enjoyed your freedom. Now you're going to be thinking about this until God takes you home." Currently, there have been no additional updates from law enforcement or prosecutors regarding the timeline for the trial.